We're going to get going, everybody. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The roll call, please, Amy.
Mr. Anise?
Present.
Mr. Bova?
Here.
Mr. Brodsky? Mr. Coyne? Mr. D'Elia?
Here.
Mr. Ford? Mr. Haskell?
Here.
Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Mutolo? And Ms. Susney? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You have the draft minutes from June 19th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve? Thanks, Danny. A second. George? Any comments, deletions, corrections? All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. This election of officers, with Rocco moving out of Utica, he lost his seat on our board, which was a big loss. He was a very proactive board member, and he worked hard at what he did here, and that was too bad. As a result of that, we do not have a treasurer. Bruce was our treasurer before he became our vice chair. And as far as I'm aware, nobody knows the numbers of this place other than Jim, his staff, better than Bruce. And so I'd be proposing to the board, Bruce has resigned as vice chair, and I'd be proposing to the board that we elect Bruce as our treasurer. If somebody, thank you, Betty. Thanks, Rich. Any comments? All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. Which also means we have the vice chairmanship open, and I'd be proposing that Vince be elected vice chair. He was a long-serving first chair of the board, and probably still should be.
Make a motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Committee reports. Jim?
Yes. In your packet or in your binder is your monthly financial report for the end of June. Everybody can get to that. Summary is consumption is still down 6.2%. It was 8.7% in May, so we've recovered a little bit, but it's still down. And water sales is down 530,000 versus our budget. So we're having an impact. However, cash flow is still positive, pretty healthy. And Pat can mention more about this, but we've already sat down and had a couple meetings about making some reductions in our expenses and our future expenses. So we're going to postpone some purchases and things like that, and looking at some favorable variances. And so we'll continue monitoring this as each month goes by, but somewhat surprising that we are down. Wolfspeed is down. We heard from them today or last week, and they're not anticipating on being at the levels that we had budgeted. So that's not a good thing. Pat, you want to, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just mention quickly about the Wolfspeed situation. Ann and I spoke with a representative at Wolfspeed that we use as a main contact, who did confirm that they've instituted some process changes over the course of the earlier part of the year, and mostly aimed at conservation. And so their use has dropped. The official forecast that they're giving us shows that over the next 12 months or so, their consumption is going to remain pretty flat at the current level. So where we were anticipating between 650 and 700,000 gallons a day of usage, it's really going to be averaging between 300 and 350,000 gallons a day. So, and we asked for that projection specifically because Jim and his team will be giving out the budget packets over the next week or two to all of our departments to start drafting next year's budget. And part of that obviously is a revenue forecasting. With Wolfspeed being our biggest customer, that's the biggest hit that we have right now, facing our revenue shortage.
So can you accommodate this reduction?
Yeah, we're going through, we have a tally of things there where we have favorable variances and where we're going to postpone some other expenditures. In addition to that, the chemicals at the treatment plant are coming in a little higher than anticipated. So we have another 300,000, we think, maybe even more on top of that, 500,000 right now. So we're going beyond that. So we're pretty close, and we'll continue doing this.
The good news on the treatment plant is that it looked like the overage on the chemical use was going to be even higher. Now it's seemingly not quite as bad as we thought it was going to be, but it's still going to be over budget. So we're looking at right now trying to grapple with potential deficit at year end of anywhere between $500,000 and $700,000. And we had a pretty productive meeting this morning, looking at a lot of our big ticket items, some equipment, some other expenditures that we can delay, we can postpone if we need to. We'll figure out a way to get by. But right now we think it's a manageable gap. We have to wait and see, and hopefully water use will rebound in the fall.
And I think the next agenda item is talk about the investment report, and that's one favorable area that I think we can get some positive variances. So I think just beyond your monthly report is the investment statement for the second quarter, June 30th. Yeah, I think it's the last page. I think it's double-sided in your, I don't know what section that is. There you go. So as you can imagine, at the time we did our budget back in September, October of last year, rates were relatively low. They've now gone up so much that I think the statement says $426,000. We budgeted for the year $350,000. We're already beyond our budget for the whole year. So that's good. So 150 to 200,000 could go towards, you know, our problem on the expense side.
One more factor too we're looking at is that when this current fiscal year budget was developed last fall, we were in the midst of the bonding process. We didn't know exactly when we were going to close, but we had an idea of what the debt service would be, and so it was programmed in that we'd be funding a certain level of debt service throughout the year. Every month, Jim's folks will send money down to the trustee to fund the next payment. What we didn't fully understand at the time was that because of paying down some prior debt, the reserve accounts that are set up with each bond issue gradually reduce in the amount that we need to hold in reserve. So there was some debt service reserve accounts that got freed up. The total was about $200,000 or so.
A little higher than that. I checked back, it was like 300,000. So it was excess, and we were, in the past, they were a little reluctant on allowing us to draw it down and put it into our sinking funds. The last couple bond issues and different times, we were able to draw that down. So we just take that amount out and we put it toward our sinking fund, which means we don't have to use operating revenues to, so we're shaking every tree we possibly can just to put towards our.
Funded several months worth of money that normally we'd send down from our operating revenue. So that'll give us a little bit of breathing space too.
Mhm.
So we're finding some unanticipated revenues. We're trying to cut some of the expenses that we think we might be able to at least delay for now. And hopefully in the end, we'll come out okay.
Any questions for Jim? We need a resolution approving the second quarter investment statement. Thank you, Rich. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions, or concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. And we have a number of resolutions to go through Are you gonna do this, Pat?
I'll give a quick introduction of these, and then if there's any specific questions, Dan Falzinski's here. Essentially, what this amounts to is that the state has announced there's $425 million of funding available under a category they call WIA, WIIA, which is Water Infrastructure Improvement something. I never see the A in the explanation, so I don't know what it is. But at any rate, it's being administered through the Environmental Facilities Corp, aka EFC. We are able to apply for these funds in certain categories, and the deadline is July 28th. It's coming up at the end of the next week. However, as part of the application process, EFC wants a resolution from the board or other authorizing agency that at least acknowledges that you're giving us permission to submit an application and request these funds. What it means, however, is that by passing these resolutions, you're not specifically approving the project or any other funding for the project. You're simply giving us the authority to request the funds. Even in the event that EFC were to fund any of these three projects, and there's certain parameters they'll follow. They can only go up to a certain amount of money. But we're not obligated to take it. Even if we find out that we do get awarded these funds, we still have to come back to the board and say, okay, here's a capital project we could get some funds for. Do you want to proceed? Here's what it's going to mean in borrowing, et cetera. And at that time, the board would then decide if we want to proceed with the project. If we don't want to proceed with the project, we would then politely tell EFC, thank you, but we're not going to accept those funds and you can pass them on to somebody else. So you're not locked in by voting on these resolutions. All you're doing is supporting the application for the funds. And these are three projects that are of larger scale where a payment of a couple $1 million can go a long way towards offsetting the costs. If you have any questions on any particular projects we're applying for, obviously Dan can speak directly to those. But I just wanted to make sure you're clear that this resolution is only supporting the request for the funds.
We're not approving a $19 million project, for example, that's in the first resolution. And we're gonna do these one at a time.
Yes, because each one has to go separately with an application.
So the first one's regarding Toby Road Tank Construction Project.
Make a motion?
Sure, please, thanks. Second? Any questions or concerns regarding that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. The second resolution concerns Phase 3A raw water main up on Hinckley. And again, we're not committing to the $8+ million on this. Rich, a second. Thank you, George. Any questions or comments regarding this resolution? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. The final one regards the program for the Hanger Road Water Tower Construction Project. Yes, Betty, thank you. A second. Thanks. Any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this resolution? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next, Pat.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Item number 8 has to do with the consultant that this board allowed us to hire going back over a year ago, his name is Don Schlanger. Schlanger Associates is his company. He's the president. He's an expert in this automated meter reading system, AMI as we call it, Advanced Metering Infrastructure. We retained him with your permission a little over a year ago to help us navigate some of these difficulties we're having with the current system. But from our last discussion, what was agreed upon was that while we continue to work with Neptune to try to keep the existing system going, we also decided we'll do a dual course of looking at other firms and starting out with a RFQ, a request for qualifications, later an RFP, and start laying the groundwork for fielding proposals for a replacement system over the next 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how much life we squeeze out of this. The only concern right now is that the original allocation with this consultant was that it was not to exceed $10,000. We're right at that limit right now. So if we want him to continue based on the direction that we've been given by all of you to continue with this RFP process, and he's got these kinds of documents ready to go, we can tailor it. we would need to retain him for an additional allocation. My thought would be another $10,000 would probably carry us through the next year, year and a half of this process. As I said, we've hit the limit. I can't continue to task him to do things and generate invoices exceeding the limit that was placed.
In capital projects, took a look at this and would recommend passage to the board. Thank you, Vince. Second. Thank you, Mark. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
I will scratch off my list the discussion of the budget. We've already put that to bed for now. Thank you, Jim. Couple quick things. One is if you haven't been up at Hinckley at all, you might notice that it's refilled. It was quite low earlier in the year. It was 9 feet below normal for a good month or so. As of this morning, it's almost 3 feet above normal for the middle of July, which is pretty darn good. Those rains really helped out. And again, I will also say that the State Canal Corp, with a different group of people that Dan and I have had a couple calls with now, seem very willing to accommodate reductions in the outflow to preserve the water level. I pointed out to them 2 months ago that it was in the settlement agreement that we had that until we finish this raw water line project, they have to maintain it at certain levels, and they've done a very good faith effort. They voluntarily cut it back to the absolute minimum amount of outflow for about 6 weeks, stopped it from dropping, and so those rains we had really brought it back up. At one point, it was 2 feet from the top of the dam, which is a very, very good place to be in the beginning of July. So we're doing quite well. I just wanted to alleviate any fears anybody had on that. As I mentioned, we've had some vacancies over the last bunch of months. Engineering in particular, Sandra Dare, our personnel director, and Dan Falzinski and I have been interviewing for engineers, and very happy to say that Sandra was successful in recruiting a younger sort of junior level engineer who's going to be starting on August 7th. So that plugs one of our vacancies. He currently works for an engineering firm out in Schenectady, but we're confident he'll do a good job. He's 31 years old, something like that. I think he's got a good amount of experience. He's not, a 20-year veteran, but I think certainly has great potential for us to grow in the job here. So we're very happy about that. We have another engineering position where we have ongoing recruitment. We're confident that we'll be able to get that filled pretty shortly if we keep our fingers crossed. And the last thing I want to mention too is that we also have someone from our engineering department, a gentleman named Chris Carmody. Obviously, Denny knows him. Some of you may have interacted with him over the years. Is an engineering technician who's been with us for 26 years now and had some prior years with the City of Utica Engineering Department before the Water Board was formed. He will be retiring and leaving us at the end of the month. So that's generating another vacancy that we anticipate filling from within house, but it will start a chain of events. So all of this means that we're going to be doing quite a bit of succession planning over the next few months. We have 2 to 3 other vacancies that we're anticipating in some critical positions over the next 6 to 8 months. So we're already sitting down and trying to figure out which ways the dominoes are going to flow and promotions, et cetera. But I did want to mention Chris Carmody leaving. He's done a great job for us over the years, worked very hard out in the field. If you saw any of the work going on Champlain Avenue, where the state is redoing the road, they're putting in new water mains. Same thing on Genesee Street up in New Hartford. He's been our key contact out there, overlooking not only the contractors, but interfacing with the state DOT on the job. Very valuable position. It's going to be tough to fill, but we wish him well. He's done a great job for us. So at that point, that's all I have for now. And other personnel matters, I'll defer to executive session unless there's any questions or anything else.
Any questions for Pat? Thank you. Any old business? Any new business? We need to go to an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. If someone can move it, thanks, Rich. Second. Ready? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.